Hello and welcome. You're on Around the Wickets, a very special segment on ThePapare.com. Now, we're talking about a special segment, and to discuss, to talk about cricket with us is a special personality. Now, he is one of the finest young writers Sri Lanka has. I should say that he is so artistic in his writing. I don't know whether that's the right way to describe his writing, but it's fascinating to read what he writes. Our guest today is Andrew Fidel Fernando, Sri Lanka's ESPN cricket correspondent. Welcome, Andrew.
Roshan, thank you. Too kind as always.
It was my pleasure. Let me start off by asking you a question. Andrew Fidel Fernando. Now, the name Fidel, are you kind of into revolutions? Because his name Fidel gets generally tagged to a revolutionist.
Yeah, this is something I get asked quite often. I think it's just my parents just like the name. But yeah, I think you'd have to ask my parents. But I think that they just liked the name. They weren't necessarily supporters of Cuban Revolution, but there it is.
Right, we're not going to talk about any revolutions, but it was just an intriguing thing that I had. I just want to find out. I always want to ask Andrew this question. Anyway, let's start off and let's try and get to the subject we are here. First and foremost, I know that you write so well about cricket. I know you got a passion about cricket, but tell us how it all started. I mean, how did this love story with cricket start?
I think like for a lot of Sri Lankan kids, I think it was just playing one bump. When we were younger, we used to go and play at my grandparents' place with all the cousins. You know, as one of the younger ones, you have to wait your turn. It's like if you watch for long enough, you get to play. So I think that's when it started. And then soon after that, the '96 World Cup happened. And after that, obviously, any Sri Lankan kid goes out and tries to bowl like Murali and bat like Aravind and Sanat in our street matches. So that happened much to the dismay of my mother. I was on the street every afternoon playing. And probably like every Sri Lankan kid, you dreamt of playing for Sri Lanka, but then, you know, you get older and you realize you're not that good. And so, you know, you switch to writing, which seems like the next best thing.
Now, who were you? You said Aravinda, Murali, and some other. Which one?
I think
did you take?
I tried to bowl like Murali, but I didn't obviously have the kink. So I tried to turn it like Murali.
There, is it?
Yeah. And then when I batted, I tried to play the Aravinda cover drive. It never really worked out very well for me.
Right. So let's get to ESPN and your association, ESPN Cricinfo, I should say. How did it all start, and how did you kind of get connected to them?
Yeah, that was, I think, a lot of luck. I was studying, my family was living in New Zealand at the time. I was studying in Auckland, and they were looking for some freelancers there, so I just emailed them out of the blue, and then 2 months later I got an email saying, why don't you try writing something for us? And then I did, and they happened to like it. And then it just started very, it wasn't the usual path into journalism. Later on, I went and got qualified and, you know, picked up a few more skills on how to report and that kind of thing. But when I started writing for Cricinfo, I hadn't even thought of becoming a writer or becoming a journalist. But then it sort of occurred to me that this is something I enjoyed doing and something I liked, so I went down that path.
Yeah, generally, if you are to succeed in something, you need to be inspired. You need to have a passion about it. You sometimes have to follow someone and try to emulate that person. What really inspired you into the subject of writing?
I think there are a lot of really good cricket writers at the moment. We could even be, a lot of people are saying, probably in one of the best ages of cricket writing, because we have so many voices. There are so many people with blogs. I started off writing a blog because basically other people around the world were doing it, and I wanted to be part of that. There are great writers on Cricinfo as well. I sort of during my teens I used to read people like Osman Samyuddin, who's now a boss. So this doubles as earning brownie points with him. Rahul Bhattacharya. These kinds of people were great writers, and I think when you read some of that, you kind of feel inspired to do that yourself. I think also Sri Lankan cricket is such a good topic to write about. There's so much. There's a great balance between passion and I suppose we're a bit laid back about our passion as well. So we don't deify. We love our sports people, but we don't necessarily put them on the too high a pedestal. So we're able to have a little bit of fun with it. and that opens up some great avenues. As a writer, you can be lighthearted, you can make a few jokes, and so Sri Lanka is a terrific cricket country to write about as well, and that is its own inspiration.
Right. Now, I've seen you write some good ones. Of course, everything has been good, but generally the positive ones. But I've also seen some controversial ones that you've written and few eyebrows raised. So if you just look back at your writing, would you like to pick on a particular, column or piece you wrote as your most favorite? I know it's tough because you've written tons and tons of them, but what is your top of the mind recall?
A couple come to mind. One was, I think, we have an online magazine called the Cricket Monthly, also run by Cricinfo. So a couple of ones that I've written for them. These are long-form pieces. One that comes to mind is in Jaffna. I went and traveled there, I think, in 2014, and we met a few people who played in Jaffna during the 90s when obviously the city was cut off. And that was a great story because you were telling quite a human story, what it was like in the city at the time, all the challenges that they had to go through to be able to play cricket, how their dreams were affected by the war and everything else that was going on. That was one that I really enjoyed writing, really enjoyed researching, and just a nice privilege to be able to tell that kind of story. The other one also is, I think, the '96 World Cup. I was lucky enough to be able to do a piece that sort of encapsulated that campaign, and I think the more I researched, the more incredible the story became to me, because a team of those kinds of resources in '96 achieving what they did, I'm not sure that we sort of can quite comprehend how incredible a story that is. And so, that was fun as well, watching players that I'd watched play, and then being able to go and talk to them and tell their stories as well. That was, I think, for any Sri Lankan journalist, cricket journalist, a '96 story has got to be right up there.
Yeah, no doubt indeed. '96 is definitely the era, or that World Cup was the thing that put Sri Lanka on the map. Now, one thing about one of the privileges that media people generally enjoy is to be able to travel around the world and understand the grounds and be able to get very close to the action. I know you have traveled a bit and gone to many places in the world. Can you pick on your most favorite grounds in terms of the media facilities, etc., etc.? I'm not that fussed about media facilities as long as there's a good game of cricket. I think one thing that I'm very firm about is that Galle is the best ground in the world to watch cricket. So when did you start writing?
Not that long. So about 2012 was when I started professionally.
So you don't have to really fuss too much about everything's available. You should have been writing in the 80s and the 90s. And when the internet started in the 2000s, where you don't have the connection, you would have been fussing a lot then.
Yeah. You had to bring your big computers, did you?
And the typewriter.
Yeah. So I've had a very, very easy life. But yeah, Galle is a terrific venue. If you look around the world, Newlands in Cape Town is a very beautiful venue. A couple of New Zealand grounds are really good as well. But I also really enjoy going to places like Bangladesh and India, where maybe the cricket facilities for media aren't that great. Bangladesh are quite good, but then also the love that people have for the sport, that's quite infectious. As a writer, you sort of feed off that a bit, and then when you finish, you can go and have a pretty good biryani or some good curries, which I always enjoy. So yeah, India and Bangladesh are two particularly loved tours, I think.
Now I know you follow the Sri Lankan team very closely. That's part of your profession. Have you ever been irritated following them, on a particular day in a test match? You get too bored, or you get upset when Sri Lanka just missed out on something. Have you ever had that experience?
Yeah, I mean, you've done it for such a long time that I'm sure you've got.
It's all about you, not about me. So I'm asking you the question. You tell me.
There have been some interesting, some very irritating days in the past year, I think, in Test cricket especially. But one that especially sticks to mind is, I think, Sharjah in 2014, when Sri Lanka went into that, playing Pakistan, went into that final test 1-0 ahead, and from the second or third day onwards, the tactics became quite defensive. because they were just trying to draw the test and come out with a series win. And on the 5th day, they became, you know, incredibly defensive, and Sri Lanka went on to lose that game in the twilight. And I think that was the day when you watched the cricket and you thought, that's not the way Sri Lanka is supposed to play. That's not sort of the brand of cricket that Sri Lanka is known for. And they ended up losing, playing that quite defensive brand. So I think probably that day was the most irritating. But there are a few contenders.
I'm sure. There are quite a few. Now, you also, I've seen you interviewing a lot of cricketers. You got to kind of, you know, go and talk to them, got to be having that close association with cricketers to try and get the best out of them, to make your story nice and beautiful and readable. Who has been the most media-friendly cricketer you've come across?
I think we've been quite lucky to have Kumar Sangakkara and Mahela Jayawardena in Sri Lankan cricket for such a long time. They're both such good communicators in any language. And sometimes you used to dread the Kumar Sangakkara press conference because you ended up having, instead of writing a 400-word story, you ended up having to write a 2,000-word piece because, you know, so much of what he said was well thought out and well presented. But someone I've really enjoyed in Sri Lanka talking to one-on-one is Rangana Herath, who's, you know, as approachable and down-to-earth as anyone can be, but also has a technical knowledge, probably someone who's had to methodically work through his game in his head, and so he's able to take you into the game quite methodically, and maybe someone without a lot of cricket experience like myself, he can sort of introduce me to aspects of the game that I haven't really thought of, and so I really enjoyed my chats with him as well. I think he's someone that anyone can benefit from talking to and gaining some knowledge about cricket.
Right. Well, Rangana Herath's not going to be here during the ICC Champions Trophy. So tell us your take on Sri Lanka's chances in the ICC Champions Trophy. How confident are you that Sri Lanka could make it?
I think Sri Lanka needs, I think the nation needs a bit of a pick-me-up right now. So I'm hoping that they'll be able to do something. I think a lot of it probably depends on Lasith Malinga, doesn't it? Because I think when he came back to the T20 side early in the year, we saw that the effect that he had on the rest of the attack. He took on those difficult overs, and then he was able to carry that side of things and free up someone like a Nuwan Kulasekara, or some of the other bowlers were able to bowl a little bit more freely and be a little bit more effective. So maybe a lot depends on him. I know it's been said a lot before, but if he has a good tournament, I think Sri Lanka put themselves in a position to get into that semi-final.
Right. Now, we know Andrew Fidel Fernando as a writer. We only know you as a writer. We know nothing else about you. What are the aspects do you have in your life? What are the pleasures do you have in your life? I don't want to know all the pleasures, but just tell us a few.
Cooking is something, cooking and food is something I really enjoy. Unfortunately, Thailand and Malaysia haven't got test teams yet. I would love to be able to tour those countries and sample their food. I think that's something I enjoy quite a lot of at home. Also with this Cricinfo job, you get to travel a lot, and that also is a passion, going to new places and exploring. I do it in a slightly nerdy way. I try to learn the history and read a little bit about it. So I think those two things have definitely been things that I do when I don't have to write about cricket or watch cricket. Yeah.
Finally, final question. What is your advice to an up-and-coming young writer? Someone watching you now, someone reading your writing, someone wanting to be a writer. What would you want to tell them?
Yeah, I'm a bit hesitant since, you know, as you mentioned, I haven't been doing it for all that long. So all I can say are things that worked for me. But I think for any writer, if you're just starting out, you have to learn to deal with rejection, because early on your writing's not going to be that good. It wasn't for me, and you know, I probably before I ended up getting the Cricinfo job, I probably begged for the job for about 2 years and kept getting rebuffed. And so you have to be able to deal with that criticism and try and use it as an opportunity to grow. And then I think when you get to a stage when maybe you're able to write and make a living out of it, never to be satisfied with where you are. Always look to better writers and try and push on to that next level. And that's only going to come by writing a lot, but also reflecting on your writing and working out where your weaknesses are and trying. It's, you know, it's very much probably like how a batsman would think about his game, or a bowler would think about his game, or even how a business person would put together a business. You know, you have to work out where the areas for growth are and try and push on in those directions. So writing's very similar to that. But yeah, early on, dealing with rejection is something that I had to do, and something probably any writer has had to go through.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for your time. I must tell you that you speak as well as you write.
Thank you very much.
Well,
That's very kind.
Well, this is Andrew Fernando. It was a great privilege, pleasure to have one of Sri Lanka's finest young writers on ThePapare.com. We hope you enjoyed it. Until we see you again, it's goodbye from all of us.